Welcome, everybody. My name's Gary Fortney, and this is The Trend. Well, continuing with our episodes on cults, we're going to continue now with Jonestown. Jonestown was a place that was run by somebody named Jim Jones. And I'm going to say it was a cult. I don't want to say the word family or followers. It was a cult led by this individual. It was in late 1970s that this happened. And we're going to talk about major tragedy that happened regarding Jim Jones and his cult followers and what came as a result of that. So the cult aspect, as I said in the previous episode, is interesting with what makes people follow these individuals that ultimately leads them into death, which is what happened here with Jonestown. And the mentality of people who are smart, had their lives ahead of them, and also their children. And that's one of the tragedies that happened here that to me still bothers me to this day about the children that died as a result of Jim Jones. So in this episode, we're going to have our producer for Trend Media, Aly Vogt. Aly, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
As you've seen Aly in previous episodes, she did a lot of research into Jonestown. How old were you in 1978?
Wasn't even close to
Okay, there you go. So anyway, yeah, I remember this happening. I was alive at the time, of course. I was 20-something years old when this happened. And I remember it very well. I remember when it happening, the thoughts about it, and the subsequent talk, documentaries, research about this happening. So Aly's going to talk about the Jim Jones and the Jonestown massacre. So Aly, why don't you kick it off about what you found in your original research and what you want to talk about with Jonestown?
Yeah, so I think we can definitely start by talking a little bit about the early days of, and we keep saying Jonestown, but really the official name that they used at the time was People's Temple.
People's Temple, and they had an agricultural site there too. That's what they called it. So People's Temple. So I say Jonestown because Jones was very instrumental in controlling these people. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. They called the settlement itself Jonestown as well, but the group, the religious group, the cult itself was called the People's Temple. The People's Temple, it was founded in 1955 by Jim Jones. And Jim Jones was mainly operating in his early days in Indianapolis, Indiana. And its early formation was it was rooted in Christian revivalism, very socialist ideology that they were working with, really involved in political activism. They worked political activism a lot of times into sermons and into their religious practices. It was kind of 50-50 really. And that's what attracted a lot of African-American members to the church. I think at its peak, about 70% of members of the People's Temple were African-American. But it's really interesting that most of the leadership, all of the leadership was white. There was no black leadership, even though the majority of the church was black.
Can I stop you right there for a second? I hope you pick up where you left off. You said it was both religious and political.
Yeah.
How did they get religion turning into mass murder? That's the thing that bothers me about this right now. Political, you see a lot of political things that come up. When we talk about Waco, that was more of a religious aspect versus a political. But what was the basis for the political activism here with them?
So a really big push for Jim Jones was fighting the racism that we were seeing this was the 50s when they were first founded. We were still seeing segregation and things in this country. And he was a big proponent of fighting that. A lot of times the church members would engage in political protests. It was a really big part of their beliefs.
And segregation, just think it didn't just start overnight. It would have been brewing, and then it came to a head in the 1960s with Martin Luther King and the fight against segregation. So, and you can understand people's passion towards wanting to correct a wrong that was going on in the country at the time. But there's a limit when you start doing wrongs yourself to try to correct a wrong.
Yeah. Jim was married to Marceline Jones. And I think it's also really important to note that Jim and Marceline adopted a lot of children. A lot of their children were adopted, not all, but some. He actually referred to his family as a rainbow family, is what he called it. And that was because a lot of the children that they adopted were not white. He had a Native American child that he adopted, a little girl. And he also, I think he and Marceline were actually the first white parents to adopt a black child in Indiana. So I think that's really interesting. It was an interesting thing to find in my research. But the church itself was actively working to desegregate a lot of local institutions in Indianapolis, like hospitals, restaurants, places like that. They did a lot of political work.
Okay. So Indiana is where they pretty much kicked it off, right?
Yep.
Where'd they eventually end up?
They did move to California.
Excellent. So yeah, that's a big part of it too, is the move that they had.
Yep. Redwood Valley.
Yep.
So the reason that they moved, Jim told his followers that he had this talk with God, and God told him that there is going to be a nuclear apocalypse. There's going to be something happen in Chicago, which is relatively close to Indianapolis, that they would see fallout. So they needed to move to the coast. They needed to move as far away from Chicago as they could. So he made several trips to California and found where he wanted to be, and eventually moved a lot of his followers with him.
And to follow this person there, and again, this was based upon a religious aspect of the followers, not really political as much, but more religious. Agree with that, Aly?
Yes, yeah. And I mean, a lot of it was, I think, having somebody that you agree with politically as well as religious beliefs that you can really, I don't know, wrap up into one. I mean, they really, really thought this guy knew what he was talking about. He had all these great ideas, and he was advocating for them. I mean,
let me stop you there. When we talked about Manson in the previous episode, a lot of it was drug-induced behavior or thought process manipulation. Why there was no really history of drug use that I found in my knowing about this. Do you find anything about drug use at all?
No.
It's just charisma, you think, or charismatic behavior, or I mean, what attracted them? Just as ideas, but where do you get the ideas from? So,
I think he was extremely charismatic, but I think the biggest part was really what he was preaching. I mean, especially at the time, to see a white man advocate so strongly for Black rights. I mean, that was just, it was kind of unheard of at the time, to see somebody fighting as hard as he was. So they really trusted him.
Who became, well, I don't want to ask you here, who really became an advocate, though, for the minority population were the Kennedys, Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy and all that around, Diamond Martin Luther King. They were politicians, of course, but they still had the fortitude to be able to think and foresight into trying to protect people's rights, too. So that was a big part of it, too. So Jones started that in 1950s, right? Moved to California. When he was in Redwood, California, did his following grow at that point in California?
So it was kind of fluctuating at this point. When we're in California, with the move, he did lose people. Some people were not willing to move.
Yep.
He did end up, he gained some, he lost some. I mean, that's kind of a complicated situation, but we're starting off pretty small here.
Okay.
Maybe 100 members, but
that's more than Manson had, though. So think about that.
Yes. Yeah. But there was also a lot of allegations of abuse, financial fraud. He was taking money from his followers, and even just coercion in the temple. But he was taking like their social security, their disability checks, like everything that these people had, he wanted. He was using. And that's really what caused Jim Jones to look at moving his followers out of the United States as a country.
What about mistreatment of the members? Was there any mistreatment that was physical abuse that you researched? Because there was that I discovered.
So we weren't seeing as much physical abuse at this point. It was much more verbal, but there was some physical abuse, and we don't necessarily know the extent of that.
But it eventually grew, right, later on.
There is actually reports that a former member committed suicide at this point and listed the People's Temple as the reason for him committing suicide.
Okay. So now we're in California. His following dwindled, let's say, to about 100. And it started to grow at some point again, right? So what do you think brought the growth of that in California? More ideological people there? Or
I do think just the area that they were in, he was definitely able to find more like-minded people, more people advocating for change, whether they agreed with him religiously or politically. If they matched up with one, they might be drawn to this. I mean, they were getting people from kind of two different sides, and they were pulling them in.
Yeah, drawing them in. And so, again, his charisma was doing it. his thoughts, claimed that he was speaking with God, and all this other stuff brought these people towards him. And eventually, things were looking good for him, I think, himself. And then things started falling apart a little bit, right, with the government, or what happened there?
So after the allegations of abuse started arising, he was very worried about the government interfering with his temple. He was worried that the government was out to get him, that some of his members might be spies and things like that, and he wanted to further segregate his following to a more remote location.
He was having signs of paranoia. I think he was mentally unstable to start off with, and his paranoia grew and grew more about the government tracking him down. And I think it wasn't so much a paranoia about himself. I think they're going to take away his money. They were taking away everything that he had, all of his followers, and he saw the government as a big threat at that point.
Oh yeah,
not trying to fight the government, but as a threat to taking down what he had increased. And so, anyways, yeah, what happened regarding that? What eventually happened with him, Aly, and his followers?
So he started looking for a new location, and I think there was a magazine article he came across that listed a small town in Brazil as one of the safest locations on the planet. So he's thinking, okay, I need to go check this out. I need to see if this is a plausible thing for me to move all of these people. And at this point, he does have hundreds of followers. If he is able to move all of these people down there, he wanted to build a commune, was really the end goal, a settlement. And so he goes down, and originally Brazil was the goal, but he actually stumbled across a smaller country called Guyana. And they had a very leftist government, pretty open to socialist ideas, which obviously Jim Jones was a proponent of. So that's kind of what he landed on. He made several trips down there in the early 70s, and eventually, because of his diplomatic and political connections, he was able to secure a lease on hundreds of acres of land that was near the Venezuelan border. And keep in mind down there, I mean, it's this land that he had secured, it's jungle. A lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, it was a very remote area, and it's just not a place you can go to move in and start living. I mean, they had to do a lot of cultivating. What I mean by cultivating is they had to provide food, they had to provide other things. So it became an agricultural base, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of the followers. So they tried to be self-sufficient. And Guyana.
Yeah, so Jim Jones signed the lease. It was 1974 when he signed the lease. He brought a couple of his closer followers down before the big move, and they started clearing the jungle, really hard labor, to create this agricultural settlement. And the end goal here was to be completely self-sufficient, not need the outside world. 1977 is when he moved the bulk of his members. I think it was somewhere between 600 and 900 members.
Think about that. Think about the growth from 100 people to 600 or 700 now that are being led by this guy who is running a cult.
And this entire time, the media coverage is really, people are concerned. A couple of people who have left the church are trying to pursue legal action. Families of people who are still in the cult are growing concerned. I mean,
about their safety and security, and about their living conditions.
Yeah. So this was the kind of the peak of the concern growing from the outside. There was a lot of worry that something bad might happen.
And he was convincing them to leave everything they knew in the United States to South America. And imagine that. It's not just only being a follower of a cult or an individual, but leaving everything and everybody who you know, from jobs to people to family members to a strange area. So think about the ability he had to influence these people. And eventually they made their way down, didn't they, to Guyana?
Yes, yep. So at this point, he's got over 900 members living in Guyana. And the first members who came down initially, mostly young and able-bodied, they were doing some really hard labor, working all days of the week, like 12-hour days in really harsh conditions. I'm thinking about what the weather conditions are like in certain South American countries. I mean, it's humid, horrendous. It's hot, it's awful.
Insects. I mean, it is just tough living conditions there.
Yeah. So they're building housing, starting the farmland, basic infrastructure, that type of thing, getting this ready for the bulk of the people. So eventually, when everybody when he's able to move the bulk of his following down, the conditions. I want to talk about the conditions because initially Jim Jones kind of sounds like a pretty good guy. I mean, all of the activism he was doing for fighting racism, I mean, he sounds like he was really fighting for some good causes, and he was trying to do some good things. But at this point, we really start to see incredible abuse. I mean, it's terrible the way that these people are being controlled. We're still the forced labor. I mean, they're still, because they're expanding, they're doing all of this agriculture related things. But we're also seeing, I mean, where they are in this remote part of the world, I mean, they have very limited medical care. Jim Jones actually made it a point to kind of cut off his followers from the rest of the world.
The rest of the world, especially their family members. That's when they grew concerned, wasn't it, about the family members and all them?
Yeah. A lot of letters that were being written to family members on the outside were never sent. Jim Jones would read everything. He or his leadership would read everything that would be going out in the mail. And these people had no way of knowing what was really going on the outside. There was very little communication.
You know, and his behavior down there, it eventually became known because some people were able to escape or communicate with the outside world. And the outside world didn't really know, but it did become known to a congressman. And Aly said, I'm not trying to minimize about the horrible living conditions. I want to make sure we get everything in for this episode regarding what happened further. So you explain a little bit about what happened there and what further you want to express on that regarding living conditions and what progressed into the outside world finding out.
Yeah, so I do want to emphasize that because they didn't know what was going on in the outside world, this is really when Jim Jones was able to further manipulate them. He would tell them that in the United States, after they've moved down there, that African Americans were being rounded up and killed, and that they were lucky, despite their living conditions, to be with him. He was keeping them safe, and that is really what kept a lot of people from leaving. Another really important detail, he staged these drills where they actually rehearsed the mass suicide that eventually did take place. Yeah, so this happened on several occasions. He would hand out cups very similar to what eventually killed most of his followers. He would hand out cups of Flavor Aid, and he told them in that moment that it was real. They thought that they were ready to kill themselves right then. And they went through this several times before they eventually proved their loyalty, because several people were like, I'm not going to drink it. And that's when he knew he either had to beat them some more or find another solution to get them in line and get them loyal to his cause. So, and he called those white knight drills. And a lot of people believe that the name was chosen because of kind of their political activism with racism. Like he was trying to scare his followers further, because the end goal here, the reason that they would commit this mass suicide, what they were told at least, is when the government finally comes. When the government comes to kill them or take them away, he said we have to kill ourselves before they kill us.
And that turns into a congressman going down to Guyana to investigate, because he had been receiving information from family members about the conditions, the being held against their will. And concerned family members did the right thing. They called a congressman. You figure a political figure to investigate would be the best way to do that. So do you know a little bit about Leo Ryan, what happened with this?
Yeah, so Leo Ryan, I don't know his background. Do you know his I don't know anything about him himself.
He was a congressman who did advocate a lot for the people in his congressional district. And the people in his district and also people outside his district were expressing concerns. And Leo Ryan took it upon himself to do a full investigation. He could have did two things. He could have sat back and had his staff members go and check on it, or go himself to firsthand view. And I congratulate the Congressman Ryan. I wanted to go in there and get a firsthand view. And out of anything, he felt like he would have been safe. You know, since he's a congressman, he felt like that he would have been able to go out down there and address the issues head on with firsthand experience, not secondhand experience. And also, if there's an issue, to bring some people back with him too. I think that was one of his goals too, is what could he do to go down there? So Congressman Ryan was a speaker for the people of family members and individuals who wanted to be, I would say, rescued from a horrible area down there. And so he travels down there with a few members of a delegation to Guyana. And they actually flew down and landed at a remote airstrip in the area.
Yeah, there was 19 of them total, including Congressman Ryan. And he brought journalists, he brought attorneys, and he actually brought relatives of members of the People's Temple, concerned family members that they wanted to see what was going on firsthand. They wanted to be a part of the investigation.
And I think I hand it to Congressman Ryan, wanting to go out there and help his constituents and also to help the American people. When you hear of abuses taking place, and I know I'd want to do that, and all of us would too, just want to step into what we can to help people. So he goes down there, he lands a remote airstrip. Jim Jones, he did meet with Jim Jones, right, when he was down there?
Yeah. And Jim Jones initially, because they knew that Congressman Ryan was coming, Jim Jones was a little bit panicked, but he quickly got everybody together, kind of explained the situation, and he really put on this incredible mask onto his community, his commune that he had built. I mean, he had people singing and dancing in the streets. I mean, the welcome for Congressman Ryan was really kind of joyous. I mean, Congressman Ryan initially was
surprised, about behavior.
This seems like a great place. Like, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to be here.
Well, eventually some word got to him through some of the cult members, right?
Yeah, so some notes were slipped to Congressman Ryan and his delegation that he brought with him. People wanted to leave. People were saying, we're scared for our lives. We want out. Some people even compared it to a communist war camp. It was said, but it was really, I mean, the living conditions at this point, I mean, they're keeping children in boxes for days at a time, dark places, keeping food away from people who disagree with Jim Jones. It's really an awful place.
And we're up to almost 1,000 people. Think about it, 1,000 people live in this area. And the problem is, let's say you got a group of 10, 15, or 20 people that try to overpower Jones. We had so many more that would have overpowered them and killed them. They're in a tough position. If I'm not mistaken, some people actually tried to leave with Congressman Ryan. Some went to a part of the city. I don't know if you know that or not, but some went to a part of the city too. You know a little bit about that at all?
Yeah, so Congressman Ryan agreed to take anybody who wanted to come with him. When he was heading back to, when his trip had concluded, he was heading back to the United States. He said, I'll take anybody who wants to come with me. And this is when Jim Jones really started to, he was upset.
He saw a threat.
And he called this his utopia. I mean, he didn't want to lose this thing that he had put so much time and so much effort into making for himself, this position of power that he had over so many people.
Oh, so many people, 1,000 people.
So as Congressman Ryan he's loading his plane, they actually had to get a second plane. There were enough people that wanted to go home, in addition to the delegation that he had brought with him, that they had to request that the Guyanese government give them a second plane. That's how many people really did want to leave. During the loading of the planes, Jim Jones sends his Red Brigade, is what he calls this group.
His enforcement team.
Enforcement team. Weapons were not allowed in Jonestown, other than Jones' Red Brigade. It was like his personal security team that a lot of times harassed the rest of the following. They kept them in line, would a lot of times just go off into the surrounding jungle and just fire rounds just to scare people, because everybody knew if they left, if they stepped out of line, they would be shot. So Jim Jones sends his Red Brigade to stop them from leaving. So as the planes are being loaded, there's a lot of firing done. They're shooting. And Congressman Ryan was shot over 20 times. And he died pretty quickly. Don Harris from NBC was also he was killed. I think 5 people in total were killed, 11 were injured, but anybody who wasn't killed, though, escaped into part of the city. The couple of survivors of the mass suicides, a lot of them are the only ones left.
And they were able to provide insight about what really happened in the jungle that day. And I've actually watched some of the interviews. I've heard some of the people, what they said about that. And this is where you hear a lot of terms about they drink the Kool-Aid or drinking the Kool-Aid. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, Aly. I know you can let's add a little bit to that, but drinking a Kool-Aid means you're taken in by certain individuals, and you're taken in by them so much you can do and manipulated by them by whatever they do. And the reason that started it was actually Flavor Aid, not Kool-Aid, about what happened. But they made a big vat, a big tub of this flavored drink laced with drugs. All right. And Jones convinced all these people to kill themselves. And, Aletta, I looked at the pictures in the 1970s. It was in magazines, showed the picture of the people that killed themselves. And I have an image of a family with their arms around each other, lying on the ground with children in between them, that they were forcing children to drink this mix. And they went out, they laid down and all died together. When I saw the parents of their arms over the children who died and the family members, I still remember that. And I have not seen these pictures since the 1970s. I remember there was a picture also of the barrel. It was actually like a tub that the Kool-Aid was in, and all the paper cups there were strewn everywhere. And again, I have not looked at these pictures since then. It's stuck in my mind. So that's where Drink the Kool-Aid came in. If you want to fill in the gaps there, Aly.
Yeah, so I think we can talk a little bit about, what's in this drink that they're making. Cyanide obviously was a key ingredient here, but there was also just a plethora of other drugs that they're putting into this. Just so many different things. Diazepam, chlorohydrate, a lot of different drugs, some to reduce anxiety, some to sedate whoever's drinking this. Everybody has had a little cup, like little tiny paper cups with a little bit of this, and it wasn't really an option at that point.
They were being forced to drink it, and there were guns out there and stuff, and they were being forced to drink this.
A lot of people drank it willingly, but a lot of people they didn't want to drink it. They didn't want to die. They knew that was it. It was real this time. So the Red Brigade is there still, surrounding these people, walking the perimeters. I mean, anybody who tries to run, they're gonna die.
They're gonna die. Exactly.
And I mean, infants and children, they were killed first. They were either, a lot of them were actually injected with a different concoction of drugs to kill them, because they might not have been old enough to drink this Kool-Aid, this flavor aid. Most adults did this willingly, and that's the hardest part to...
And killing their own children.
Yeah, and killing their own children, their entire family. It's hard to understand what would get somebody to a point where they're willing to kill not only themselves but their entire family.
And that was the heartbreaking part of this. I still remember to this day when that happened. I remember seeing the pictures. I've not looked at the pictures since. I mean, like I say, it still sticks in my mind. And the influence that one person put. I think this is still the largest mass suicide, okay, that happened. Because I think over 900 people killed. I'm just off my memory, by the way, okay, about what happened. I remember it very vividly. I remember some of the pilots who flew the airplanes with the coffins flying them back. They talk about the eerie feeling they had about hauling all these people back to the United States. A lot of bodies decomposed. I know well about decomposers. Those are my history as a homicide detective. In the jungle, they decomposed really quick, became unrecognizable. And I remember them being in these metal coffins, being loaded onto airplanes by the U.S. and flying back to the United States to bring them back. And unfortunately, it's a tragedy that I wish would have been followed more, because even up to this day, there's still cult followings that take place with young people and even old people or smart people being influenced by these people. And again, when I say tragedy, it's horrendous what happened in Jonestown. Again, that name, I remember it more. And Jim Jones, the person who influenced them to do so. I don't forget, any closing thoughts, Aly, you have about this that you want to share?
Yeah, well, I think there's still several more details that we can talk about. Yep. Jim Jones, his body was found.
And how did he die?
A gunshot wound to the head. And there's a lot of speculation. The nature of his wounds were, they could have been self-inflicted, or they could have been assisted. Somebody could have done this to him. It's still unclear. But of the 909 people that died, 304 of them were children.
Unbelievable.
Under the age of 18. And that's extremely upsetting. I want to talk a little bit about, there's a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding Jonestown and the mass suicide that took place. I don't know if you know anything about those, but
I've not followed it very much. I do know a little bit. Why don't you fill me in what you found in your research?
Yeah, so the biggest one it was pretty widespread. It was believed that the CIA actually orchestrated Jonestown, that Jones himself even could have been a CIA operative, and that they were conducting mind control experiments. As crazy as that sounds.
Well, to be honest with you, Aly, there was a program called MK Ultra. MK Ultra was mind altering. They did with LSD on soldiers back then. Are you familiar with it? Go ahead. So
Yeah, that was actually what people believed were like that was the continuation of MK Ultra. And I think it's really an interesting idea. I'm not sure exactly how much merit it has details wise. I think it would be extremely difficult thing to imagine our own government doing, but that might be beyond me. But
they had enough volunteers for that. Actually, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, he was under the influence of some U.S. government experiments when he was at Harvard. And that was instrumental in Ted Kaczynski becoming the Unabomber. So that would be another episode at some point. But yeah, I think the government was no doubt involved in some of these things. But MK Ultra was confined to military people, and they're mostly, quote, volunteers. Well, I cannot see the government being involved here. I know the government has always been the target of conspiracies, but it's interesting what's out there. So
it is. People come up with a lot of really interesting ideas and thoughts about things like this. And it's difficult to try to explain.
Yeah. Comprehending this to me is just unbelievable about what happens. And occults are very interesting. I can't say I encountered any in my career, really. I've seen people under the influence and that follow people to commit murders, commit crimes, and all that, but on such a mass scale. I wish I would have had a chance to interrogate somebody like Jim Jones or these other cult people to see what made their minds tick. Again, I had an opportunity to interrogate a lot of murder suspects and so on and see what goes. But these people are a different breed. And we're talking neurotic and psychotic behavior, but enough to influence people to me is really interesting. So
yeah, truly evil people.
Yeah, and to people who follow it. I can't stress enough of those of you out there listening. There's nothing wrong with being influenced by people in a positive way. Influence people to make your life better. But to have influences happen to create some of these issues that happen regarding Charles Manson and Jim Jones. And we're going to talk about Waco in the next episode about what really happened down there with David Koresh. And fortunately, we're going to have Tony P. Warchuk, retired ATF agent, and talk. He was down there when it happened and about what his thoughts are. He doesn't talk about it too much about Waco. Tony is also at the Pentagon doing the investigation when the plane crashed into the Pentagon. He did a lot of body recovery investigation down there too. We'll talk with him about that. Anyways, Aly, thank you so much for your research. I really appreciate it. Again, I think it's an eye-opening experience so long ago, but so present in my mind because, again, I remember when this happened. And I have feelings for the people involved in these type of situations. And, again, think hard, everybody, okay, about what you do, the path you follow, make a positive aspect and move forward in a positive way in your life. So any closing thoughts, Aly?
Yeah, I mean, you can question authority. I mean, I think that's something that, especially in circumstances like this, it was lost. You have the power in situations like this. Just don't forget to question what people are telling you.
And even how about going to people on the outside who you know have your best interest? Ask them, what do you think about this? What should I do here? And don't forget the people you can trust out there too about ask, hey, is this a good idea or not? This is my thoughts. And before it gets too late in certain circumstances. So, well, I just want to thank Aly Vogt for being on the episode here. I really appreciate when you, Sarah, and George are now coming on the episodes. It helps a little bit too. And with you being the younger generation, I really like your thoughts about things that happened even before you were alive, that I was alive at the time these happened. And you're going to be the upcoming future for a lot of things in law enforcement society. And so having you part of the trends and also some thoughts really means a lot to me as a person. Okay, so thank you guys so much. Again, stay tuned, stay informed. And I really appreciate everybody listening to us today. Again, upcoming episode will be on Waco, the Waco tragedy there that actually turned into a secondary tragedy of what happened with the Oklahoma City bombing. So again, my name is Gary Fortney. Thanks for listening. And this is The Trend. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into this episode of The Trend. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us at The Trend's website at www.trendmediallc.com, or you can email us at any time at thetrend@trendmediallc.com. We welcome everybody's comments, suggestions, or reviews. Don't forget to stay connected with us on social media. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Trend Media Podcast, and join the conversation on Facebook by searching The Trend Podcast. Check out our Amazon page through the link on our website where you'll find some of our recommended products. We'll be back next time with more true crime stories, insights on law enforcement trends, and current trends with our region and the people we serve. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay part of The Trend.